Hi and g'day, peeps. Episode 4 coming to you in your ears, whether that's through your earbuds or your phone or on the radio on your car. But in episode 4, I've got a bit of a fan favorite. This person was constantly asked for by our millions of viewers, and I'd love to introduce you to none other than the superstar herself from all the way up in Gimoy country, up in Cairns. Nadine Hunt. How are you, Nadine?
Good, thanks, Nat. Good.
How's weather up there actually, firstly? Were you guys impacted at all with the hurricane?
Oh no, we're too far north. We've just got a lot of heat and humidity. We had a little bit of rain probably a month ago, but yeah, definitely did not get affected as badly as the guys down south. Just yeah, usual summer here in Cairns. Even though
Usual
what are we in
summer
June?
coming into autumn, which is still summer.
Same.
Nads, or Nadine, can you just give us a bit of rundown? So who is Nadine Hunt? If you had to explain who you are in a couple of minutes, who are you?
So I'm a Largan Kanju woman. So from far north Queensland, up in the Torres Straits, my grandfather's country on Yum Island, and my grandmother is Malay, also Boigu, but also Cape York Cohen. But born, raised here in Cairns, so very proud of that. Also a very proud mum to a 6-year-old. At the moment, I'm a master's student, also a running and tri coach. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of like to be across a lot of boxes as opposed to being one. But yeah.
And going into your mob or your mobs, because you named quite a few, could you because there's even for me as a black fella, when you say, because I grew up in New South Wales, mobs from WA, when you start explaining who your mobs are, could you give sort of a bit more of a geographical breakdown to that? Like even the Torres Strait, because there's so many different islands in the Torres Strait, and trying to even give a bit of a picture of the Torres Strait, the different islands, and where you sort of fit within that piece as well.
Torres Straits, there's kind of like clusters of islands. So if you think about the tip of Australia, so the pointy end, which is like Cape York, then there's a body of sea in between Australia and Papua New Guinea. And that's where the Torres Strait Islands are. So where my pop's island is, it's like Turtleback Island. So it's called Yum Island, Iama. But it's from like the Cook Valley Nation, which is like the Central Islands. They're just like clusters. So you could kind of get a map and it's all kind of spread across, but then it's in those distinct clusters of islands. And so, yeah, very, very small. Even like Tudu, which is like my pop's ancestral islands, like it's practically almost underwater. So there's a whole different world of rich culture and living up that way in the Torres Straits and even in Cape York. So my parents live up in Arapahoe, but also kind of like Seychelles and the tip is I guess everyone thinks Cape York is a lot of Aboriginal communities, but there's also that strong Torres Strait Islander influence too. So a lot of mob from Saibai Island, which is closer to PNG, are kind of in Seychelles on the mainland as well. So it's a beautiful part of the country and something I'm very like privileged to have grown up around with my pop in particular. I think every Christmas we used to get sent up there for Christmas to stay with my nan and pop on TI, and then it was just going out on the dinghy with my pop, like whether it was one day looking for turtle eggs on Wednesday Island, another day just playing at the beachfront, like marbles in the dirt, like just that really privileged upbringing. I look at it as something that has really shaped kind of the person I am today.
Yeah, and when you mention TI, I'm assuming that means Thursday
Oh,
Island.
yeah,
But yeah,
sorry.
and that's kind of for people again who might not have been to the Torres Strait. It's probably the main island, almost like the heart in some respects. Most people have to go into Thursday Island to start traveling to the other islands.
Absolutely. You actually fly into Horn Island, which is where the airport is. So you can get like a SkyTrains or QantasLink into Horn Island, and then you catch the ferry over to Thursday Island, which is where like all your major services are, I guess, like your hospitals, your school, like your bigger schools, things like that. And then all the outer islands, which you can get. Like people go by dinghy, but you can also get charter flights and stuff like that. It's all fairly accessible.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting point just to talk about. So, like, obviously in Australia, there's like so many different mobs, but what a lot of people aren't aware of is there's two distinct Indigenous groups, which you are very fortunate to have the bloodlines of both, which is Torres Strait and Aboriginal. And I guess a majority of Australians are probably well aware or have had some experience with either Aboriginal people or that culture and might be a bit more aware of it, but maybe less so in Torres Strait if you're particularly if you're not from Queensland. And there's obviously scatters of different Torres Strait Island mob all over the country, but it's probably like a good opportunity just to sort of like distinguish, like there are like cultural differences, like they are two distinct different groups. How, if, and this might be really hard, but how would you articulate like the difference between Torres Strait Island mob and Aboriginal mob, whether that's a cultural aspect, religion, way of life?
So I guess for me, like, although my grandmother's Aboriginal, I didn't grow up knowing a lot about our Aboriginal heritage. And because my grandparents, like the generation where they had children and stuff, Nan had to kind of always identify as being Malay so that she was never taken. And so it's kind of hard to go like, these are the difference when I kind of only know one way. And for me, both my grandparents are very strong in religion. Like my pop was a pastor at a church. They kind of ran the church up in Thursday Island. And so that kind of Christianity or faith is very, very strong up in the Torres Straits. But I think also like the strength, or I don't know how to, I guess when it comes to like bloodlines and stuff like that, I feel like the women are very much the strength, but also when it comes to whether it's like land or passing down of things, it's like the male lineage, which I feel like that could be a big difference there too. Like there's more of an emphasis on like the boys or the brothers or the sons, which I feel like maybe that's a difference just from my perspective. But yeah, like it's a hard one for me to articulate because I guess I wasn't exposed to both.
Yeah.
And particularly from like Cape York growing up, like it was just the way I was growing up, and it was very much like that village growing up and everyone looking after each other and each other's kids. And like my pot was very, very well known up in the Torres Straits. And like, even though I was like this little fair skinned girl up there, like as soon as you said you were like William David's granddaughter, like everyone would just go and fuss over you and look after you. And it was like that sense of respect to him and who he was as a warrior man up there. Whereas I feel like my nan was probably played down a little bit, even though she was always holding the weight of everything else. And that's kind of something I've always noticed. I was like you just kind of sit back and observe, and how much like the men were kind of amplified from that perspective. But and then it could have been a difference too because my nan, was Aboriginal, and she is Boigu as well, but she was Malay, she was Aboriginal, and sometimes it's kind of like that. I don't know, cross-cultural relationships and could sometimes cause some barriers back then, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And I probably didn't frame that question right, so I apologize for that. And it's such a complex thing to try to articulate, and you can only articulate on your personal experience. But I do think it's interesting you brought up, like, we've had Bobby, we've had Carinya, we've had Ambrose, and they're very much talked about within Aboriginal society. It's very like matriarchal, particularly in like bloodlines, the way that's passed down. You follow your mother's line, and not that I've got a great deal of experience, obviously, with the Torres Strait Island culture, but one thing that comes to mind when you talked about more of a patrilineal passing down of particular land was in the First Australians documentary series, episode 6, which is around Eddie Koiki Mabo. And I guess that explanation of native title and the way that land was passed down, and because he was adopted when his father passed on the land to him, the federal court used that against him, saying, well, it's not actually you're not who you say you are, but that very much talks about that patrilineal line of passing on ownership of cultural land in that aspect.
And it's not until you kind of grow up and you're an adult that you kind of sit back and go, hey, wait a second, my nan's over here doing all the heavy lifting too. And yeah, so I like it's, you know, the song lines, the dancing, like celebration of culture and who Torres Strait Islanders are as people is like that proudness has always been instilled in me from my grandfather. And I think like that's always been something very distinct as a Torres Strait Islander is like you never be ashamed of who you are. Like we are proud people, we are strong people. Like we didn't get claimed up here because we are warriors and literally we'll cut heads off, you know. But it was just that power that came within that messaging from my pop was like always be proud of who you are. This is who you are. This is who you are. And so like, you know, look at me. I've got the fairest skin, you know what I mean? And like never in my life have I not been ashamed about, you know, saying who I am and where I'm from. And I think that's definitely been like a cultural strength that was like drilled into me being raised by my grandparents and my parents.
Amazing. So for those that haven't had the chance, like, do go and learn a bit more about the Torres Strait Island mob. You guys have the best dancing. Like I just love watching, particularly cultural performances. The whistling always. I don't know what it is with the Torres Strait Island mob's whistle, but it's so good. But I guess like most people, at least in the tri mob context, have come to get to know you as a bit of a weapon of an athlete. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that you've been doing triathlon for maybe 4 years now, but you've got like a bit more of an endurance background that probably people aren't aware of. So I got to meet Nadine back in, I think, 2020 when you were working for the Indigenous Marathon Foundation and you were a member of the IMP squad in 2011. So it'd be cool just to learn a little bit about your journey, like how you got into, let's call it endurance sports or running to start off with, like what triggered you into that, I guess, running into that world.
Absolutely, Holly. So I grew up playing soccer from a 6-year-old and then kind of through the back end of high school into my early teens got roped into playing AFL because I think people realised maybe the skills were transferable. And so both of them are quite running games. However, off the park or even sometimes I was pretty lazy at training, but outside of training, I kind of would never get convinced to go for a run. It just was not something anyone did up here in Cairns back then, especially mob. I know when people travel to Cairns now, like the Esplanade is packed, but like honestly, before Ironman hit Cairns, it was never like that. It was just, you know, pretty chilled. And so how did I get into running? I was doing like a Cert 3 in fitness at TAFE and I came across like these two of my teachers who like are good friends now. And they used to do like this 20-minute challenge on a Thursday once a term. And it was like this certain distance, how many times you could go up and back for 20 minutes. And, you know, I was 23 and would probably go out, you know, 3 or 4 times a week. And it just happened to be a day after like dollar drinks the night before. You kind of rock up with
That's
a bit of a
dollar water drinks out there.
dollar water drinks. Like I just turned up and like I had a good relationship with the teachers, but like I was a bit of a floater back then. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do in life. And so I just kind of filled gaps, like whether it was working or go and do little courses and rocked up and MF the teacher. She was in her 50s, did lots of marathons and like, I'm going to do this challenge and my record is 20. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh yeah, we'll see, whatever. Did the challenge and I was kind of on the 20 and I was completely busted, but I was like, I have to beat this old girl's score. Like, what the hell? And so I got 21 and I was absolutely ruined. And I always remember that moment because it was so hot, it was so crap. But like, it was kind of like a point where I was able to showcase what I was capable of without even realizing it. Like, this lady kind of went, like, she saw something in that moment of me just being a bit of a rat bag. And then like the IMP project was in its second year. The first year they had the 4 Aboriginal men from Central Australia, and then the second year they thought they'd include women in the application process. So Sonia, the other fitness teacher, kind of signed me up without me knowing. So she did the online form. I'd never heard of it, the project. Kind of a few weeks later, I just kept getting phone calls from the foundation, like, we're coming to Cairns, like, we got your application, this, and I'd just keep going, like, I don't know what you're talking about, I didn't apply. And I'd just keep hanging up. And I think after the 4th time, I was like, I should probably, like, Google who these people are. And then lo and behold, I found out one of these teachers actually, like, nominated on my behalf and just forgot to tell me. So I think after yarning to them and going, okay, like, I'll show up. Like, if they think I can do this, well, then I'll turn up. It would have been this time, 14 years ago. It was in March, about to get hit by another cyclone a week later, and they thought they'd turn up and do a tryout at Barlow Park. And yeah, and just turned up, didn't know what I needed to do. I did a 3K time trial, a beat test, and then an interview, and then literally just went home on my way and never thought about that day ever again. Yeah, and then a month later got a call to say, like, you've been included, like, in this 20-person squad. No guarantees. We're going to take, like, a smaller squad to New York, and you just have to run a marathon. And I was like, okay, like, whatever. And so, yeah, kind of, I was surrounded by really good people without even realizing it, I think. And there was a lot of older women that were, like, backing me. And I think, you know, that was very rare for me. I think going through high school and even in my early 20s, yeah, I don't know, I just didn't really feel like I was worth much or capable of doing much. Like, I was just such a floater. But yeah, these ladies were like, nah, we're starting this 1K a week to build up to 21Ks. We're going to get women involved. Even if you don't get into the program, like, come and do this and we'll go to the Gold Coast half anyway. And I was like, yeah, okay, like, this sounds great. But yeah, got into IMP, you know, did like the structured program that they have, the 4 camps. I was probably still floating and not putting in what I needed to because I didn't understand what I needed to do. Like, I didn't have a Garmin, didn't track anything. Kind of thought I was doing what I was told until I did, like, the second camp, which was the Gold Coast Half Marathon. And again, just towed the line and just ran as hard as I could for 21Ks. And, like, I was sick, like, literally for 24 hours after. Like, I'd pushed myself to a point without even realizing that I was, like, sick all day. And I remember Deeks, you know, the first thing he says to me was like, well, you know how far you just ran? Well, a marathon's like twice that. And, like, the penny dropped. Like, what was that, July, 3 months out of, or 4 months out of the New York Marathon, like, I'd realized how far a marathon was. Like, it took me halfway through this program that I'd signed up for and gotten into that I had to run 2Ks, which just kind of blew my mind. But at the same time, something shifted in my mindset that when I went home from that camp, like, I linked up with my sis, Bianca, who was in the squad with me as well, and was just like, we've got to keep each other accountable. She's a little bit older than me. She'd always give me, like, a good growling because I was a bit of a stronghead. But it was just like 4 months. I did everything I was told. Like, my coach, Timmer, at the time, I just tick every box off, you know. And for my birthday in August, like, I asked mum and dad, like, can you chip in for a watch? So I got this big old bulky Garmin and
watch.
Oh, the big one's taking up my whole
Was that
arm.
the big orange one?
It was a grey one, but it literally was, like, bigger than my hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of just shifted a lot of things for me. I think I learned how to be disciplined. I learned how to trust the process, I guess you can say. And I was more invested in something, even though I was still unsure what would come about it. But again, like, I kind of always relapse coming into camps and would kind of just go back and self-doubt, and they'd be like, oh, I can't do this. I'm going to get dropped after this camp. Like, every single camp, I'd always go home going, like, they're going to kick me out. Like, this is going to be it. And then the 30K time trial in September, which is where they select the squad based after that run. Like, Bianca and I got lost. I don't know how we got lost, but like I remember we ran 33Ks and we didn't know where we were. And I was sitting on the ground. I was crying, going like, we're not going to get it. We're not going to get it. We're going to kick us out because we got lost. But it was just like, I'd kind of take 3 steps forward and then like my head would just drag me back. Like just that confidence would just relapse. And like lucky enough, got into that squad to go do my first marathon in New York. And like Bianca and I would do well at events, but like the young fellas would just always cruise past us in the squad. And like we just
the other men, like the boys.
Yeah, the other 7 guys that were in the program. And so like, which is fine, it's about you versus you, but New York really, really showcased the strength of women and Black women. And I remember like running that race with Bianca. And, she'd go through tough patches, I'd go through tough patches, and we were just there to support each other. And then we finished, and I remember seeing the face of my coach, and he was like, you guys aren't supposed to be here by now. He was just like, I had predicted you to be like 20 minutes slower than what you guys just ran.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, no, but not in a bad way. Like all of our times throughout the year, and like we just had like stellar runs. And literally 2 days before, like I'd had a meltdown because I was like, I can't even run 3Ks. How am I going to run this marathon? Like, again, like just the crazy stuff that goes through your head. And then to be able to kind of finish and triumph, like I'd never experienced anything like that. And like that sense of relief of crossing the finish line and literally feeling like I dropped like 20 kilos off my back. Like that moment was like the first time I'd realized that I was carrying like so much dead weight, like for the 23 years of my life that I didn't need to. And that regardless of how things turned out that day, everyone was back home. Everyone didn't understand what I was doing, but they were proud. I think that was a real turning point for me to sort my shit out and go like I'm so privileged to have an opportunity like this. Like, what am I going to do about it? Like, I always promise myself wherever I end up, whether it's back home, whether it's wherever I might be, like I've got to make a commitment to myself and to the people that supported me, my community and my family, to always be that example. And that's something, 14 years later, I'm just so proud of that. Like, I never gave up on what I said I was going to do. Like I said, like, this is the start of just having a life of positive things, like building and never second guessing and never saying opportunity, like no to opportunities. Like, it's good to be uncomfortable because it's, if you're in a position of privilege where you can influence and guide and set an example to people that are just like you, well then, like, you should be doing it. Like, I always think, like, if you've got that platform and you've got that privilege, like it is 110% your responsibility to do that for the people that are always at home backing you. So that's how I got into endurance sport.
Yeah.
I think, like
there's so much to unpack in that, and there's like a couple of things I do want to unpack if we can.
Yeah, because
the first thing, just because, as I said at the start, a lot of people look at you and just go, wow, phenomenal athlete, look what she does. I can never get to what she's capable, what she's doing, without realizing the backstory of how much work has gone in to get to that. So just like when you talk about Goldie, firstly, do you remember what your time was?
5 on the dot.
Oh, so that again, because you cut out.
1 hour 45.
Yeah, 1 hour 45. So actually, that's quite a good time.
I destroyed myself. Absolutely destroyed myself.
Yeah. And then moving forward, so New York, what was your time roughly?
3 hours, 40 minutes and 44 seconds.
Yeah. So that's pretty like good for your first ever marathon. And kind of like, as you mentioned, you and Bianca were kind of, well, not kind of, you were groundbreakers for First Nations women in that space, which kind of leads me to the next point is one of the things you mentioned at the end was like family didn't really understand what you were doing or friends. And that I think has been an interesting thing. Like, even if I think of myself and my journey and mob not really understanding like what it is you're doing and why you would do it. But have you noticed a real shift in that? Like, people, particularly mob now, get it because there's been all these different programs, whether it's IMP, whether it's Deadly Runners, whether it's Tri Mob, whether it's just other blackfellas doing amazing things. Like, what have you noticed in that shift?
Oh my God. Like the best example is like the first year I did 9 men. My dad was at home 20 minutes away from where the race was, just at home. And then like my third Ironman in Cairns, my dad was at the finish line with the tracker yelling at me that I'm coming like first in my age group. And all I could think was like, what a contrast. Like 3 years, this fella was sitting on the couch at home while I was doing my first Ironman to like fully immersed in what was going on and understanding that. Same with my mum. Like my mum's always been like super keen. But again, like just to have your parents know how to track you in a race is like that's groundbreaking for me.
Yeah.
Like it's just a kind of game changer. But I think I'm like so blessed up here in Cairns. Like the community up here, holy, like I've been really blessed to be involved like with the Deadly Runners for almost 10 years now, like a running and walking group up here, which is completely led and organized by mob volunteers and community members and everyone like I always remember one of my athletes, Davika, saying like when one wins, we all win. Like I remember she said that to me and I was like, that's always stuck with me. Like it's so true when it comes to representation and representing your community, whether it's mob or not mob, people that are proud of who you are and where you're from, like genuinely want to see you win. And I don't mean come in first place win. However win looks, they want that because they feel like they're a part of it too. And I love like that my journey, especially into triathlon in the last 4 years, I've been able to take, all the community and all the runners I've been involved with for such a long time on this crazy journey that I've been on every step of the way. It's really special.
And yeah, and we'll obviously, you've started touching on, I guess, your Ironman piece or your experience in triathlon, and I am going to get to that, but I do just have one more thing I want to sort of unpack is I think the power of people believing in you and how something so minuscule can potentially turn into so much. And like, you've obviously done multiple marathons now. You've been to Kona. You've done a fair few Ironmans and more to come, and we'll talk about that. But I guess like reflecting, like how important were those two individuals in your life, particularly that one person where they had that challenge you were talking about, and it was like this 20-minute challenge, which probably seems so little, but when you think back, that is really the beginning of the catalyst that gets you to where you are today. Like how important are those individuals, and like, yeah, like what is it, in thinking in retrospect, how does like a 20-minute exercise has changed your life so much?
Like I could tell you the exact location, what the weather was like, because it was like a shifting point for me because of these two teachers. Like I don't even remember half of the course, but it's just those distinct moments. And it's not until years later and you do all these things that you go, like, because of their belief in me, I was able to back myself to do something uncomfortable. And I, like so often I'd relapse and do things like that, but then you'd kind of get another person that would do the same thing, or another person that would do the same thing. And like, yeah, it's so pivotal. And I'm really lucky. MF doesn't live in Cairns anymore. She's on the Tablelands, but randomly touches base. But like Sonia Barber, the other lady, is like heavily involved with what Libby Cook's doing at the Female Co. And I just, yeah, and it's really special. I'm like these people are just completely put on the earth to create greatness and just constantly give because they want women to feel empowered and to really show the world like what we're made of. Yeah. Same with IMF, all the stuff with IMF and Dix and Tim and coming across people like Bianca. Yeah, you pick your path, but you have people kind of bumping you back onto it when you feel like navigating off a little bit. Yeah, those moments are definitely kind of where that endurance started because it just shifted me to look at something I was never ever going to look into. Never in my life. I don't think I would have run a marathon if it was for those people.
Yeah, I just think it's such a good thing for the audience to hear. Like, there's probably a person out there who maybe doesn't realize the impact that they can have or might be having. And I think it's a good opportunity to just be like, investing a bit of time in someone, how far that can take them. But then there's also like, whether you're mob or non-mob, like you might be out there going, I don't want to do this 20-minute run. Like, what's the point of it? But like, it might not even be running. It might be going to the gym. It might be going for a swim. It could be whatever. It could be doing an assignment. But where that can lead to, like something so minuscule can turn into something so great if you're just willing to give it a go. And that's, you were just willing to give it a go and then also wanted to beat the lady. So
Absolutely. And I think that's why, like, post the marathon, I kind of promised myself, like, our responsibility, we got given this opportunity, like, all this stuff, all these trips, like, what are you going to do about it? And I just feel like it's our responsibility to be able to create those spaces for people because you're right. Like, you don't know what you said to someone 5 years ago, how that could have completely shifted their path. And so I think it's really important. I think if any of us are in positions or spaces where we can contribute or make a difference in a positive way, that we really should be doing it.
yeah. Let's circle into your triathlon space because if we continue to do your running, like we've got lots of years and we'll never get through. We'll be here for 10 hours. But tell us how you got into triathlon or what made you decide to give a triathlon a go.
Yeah, so Libby and Colin from Cairns, two grads, had gotten a relay entry and they were looking for a cyclist.
And this is
so,
into Can 70.3,
yeah,
wasn't it, when you say yeah?
yeah, sorry, this is back in 2021, June. And so I think January, February, I got a bike. I just kind of had a stationary one at home. Alex was 2.5, and I was hating running. Like, it was just too hard. Everything was too hard when it came to running. So I thought, oh, I'll get on a bike, I'll do a relay, have a bit of fun. Did that event. Like, I'd done the relay before, but the run leg, so I'd never done the bike leg. Joined a local group at the time, just purely just to do cycling. Did the 90Ks, and then all of a sudden I was turning up to squad pool sessions and had signed up to do a triathlon block. And I still don't even know how I got there, but I loved it. Like, I was absolutely hooked. The people were amazing. And I'm constantly humbled and reminded by some of these people about like my first session turning up to a squad, like a bunch ride with triathletes and literally walking up and everyone sees you as the new girl and everyone stops and looks. And I remember just like pulling up and just falling to the ground, like, because I couldn't clip my cleats out. And so it's like you said, everyone thinks like, oh, this amazing athlete. But I'm like, no, actually 3 years ago, that's where I started, on the floor at the Cairns Esplanade, not being able to clip my feet out. So I very much, just chipped away at the back of the pack. Not a great swimmer, wasn't a great rider, and no one in the group knew I could run. And so it was kind of nice to kind of be in a new space. And I really loved the beginning of my triathlon journey because it's very rare as an adult to be able to learn a new skill, like to willingly put yourself out there to learn something new. And I felt like with swimming and riding in particular that I was able to do that. And I kind of really got focused in trying to get better at that. So I did my first sprint triathlon in 2022. on my birthday, and then 2021, and then 2022 in March did my first 70.3 down in Melbourne. Ironman's kind of never really crossed my mind, to be honest. I thought they were a little bit crazy, and everyone that did them was a little bit crazy until some things kind of shifted and ended up doing Cairns Ironman in 2022, which is, yeah, it kind of feels like a lifetime ago, but it's only 2.5 years ago. But to think how I got to that point, all the triathlon training and stuff, it wasn't a lot. It was just, Alex was quite young, so I couldn't really fit in what I can fit in now. But it made me like be around like-minded people and such a fun and like welcoming community, which is so to sport. The sport of triathlon is just so welcoming, and no one cares how quick or, where you are in the pack. It's just always very welcoming. And so, yeah, so I was just doing 70.3 training for Cairns in 2022 because that's what I was registered for. And then a couple of weeks out, just had a little bit of a bike crash, and it wasn't bad. But I think it could have been bad. I think it's one of those things where you walk away, your bike's okay, you're okay. But if the timing of things is different, maybe things would have been different. And it kind of shifted a lot of things in my mind and in my life about who I was, where I was going, and what I want in my future. And so the week after, we kind of had a brick session, and I was doing all the training with the guys at the time. So my good mate Josh, and also James at the time, and a few others were doing Cairns Ironman, and I'd just jump in and do their swims. I would do their rides, and then I'd detour off and go home at 100 Ks while they continued on for 180. And yeah, I don't know, a seed was kind of planted by them, okay? I remember James making a comment at having coffee after a squad session in front of Josh and my coach at the time. Why don't you just do the Ironman? You've practically done all the training with us anyway. What difference does it make? And I was like, oh, I haven't really ridden over 100 Ks and I haven't swum over 3 Ks, but I know I can run a marathon. And so I just thought, YOLO. I remember giving you a call, Nat, spoke to my coach, and I kind of just got a gauge of if people thought I'd be able to finish based on the training that I'd done. And that's kind of how I got to doing my first Ironman. It certainly wasn't planned. Besides, those 3 men sitting at the table with me having a coffee that morning, no one really knew in the group or in Cairns until the day before the race that I was doing the Ironman. I think even on the morning of the race, one of our teammates was kind of panicking because he was like, Nads, isn't it the start line of the 70.3? It's gone off. She's missing her race. And he was like, what's going on here? And I was like, well, decided to upgrade and do the Ironman today. And it was honestly one of the best experiences of my life. Yeah, I probably didn't do the required Ironman training, but I knew that I was tough enough. I had years of running in my legs, and that if I took it easy in the swim and ride, I'd most certainly get to the finish line. And I did, and it was just amazing. And the minute I finished, I was like, I need to come back and do this again, but actually train for an Ironman. And I think that was kind of the moment I really got hooked into that one day event. I'm not a fan of 70.3s, not a fan of the shorter stuff, but something about the Ironman, I just thoroughly enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, I remember very clearly that conversation. I don't know if I called you or you called me on a Tuesday. I think I called you because I was just from the outside looking in, there seemed to be a lot of transitioning in your life at that time. And I was like, are you okay? Kind of thing. Not that anyone had said anything, but you just kind of get a feeling. And then I do remember talking to you. You're like, oh, look, I'm thinking this. And it was pretty simple conversation. I was like, well, do you think you could swim 3.8K? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, well, what's the furthest you've ridden? And I might have been 140 at the time because you'd been doing a bit of training. I was like, do you think you could ride 40 kilometer more? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, well, we know you can do a marathon. And then I was like, why are you doing the half? Like, are you doing it to get a PB? And you're like, no. I was like, well, what are you doing it for? And she's like, I'm just doing it because it's in Cairns. I was like, well, let's do the Ironman then. But I think and that was then I think on the Wednesday you transitioned across. So that was the Wednesday, the race is on the Sunday. And not that it's a recommendation for people to like not do the training, but I do think it's an interesting thing for people to be like the mindset shift that you can have, or the mindset mentality that you can be like, if you tell yourself you can't, you won't. But if you tell yourself you can, then you at least give yourself a starting point to be like, okay, let's lean into this. I think that's very much what you did. And so since then, you've obviously dived pretty deeply into the sport. You did another Ironman in Cairns the following year. That was 2023. So yeah, so let's move into that. You end up diving in pretty head first, and go back to do Ironman Cairns with the goal of obviously improving. What was your goals, I guess, leading into that race? Like, what was your aspirations after having done your first Ironman?
That's one, like you said, like a lot of big life changes, and coming into 2023 and things started to settle. I kind of was like, okay, like here we go, Ironman build, and never really spoke to many people about what I was thinking. And I wrote it down in a notebook, which I still have, of like what I was thinking. I was like, in my head, I was like, I want to go sub 11. I want to get top 5. And if I can do that, that might mean a Kona slot because they had extra slots for Cairns. And I was like, my age group is one of the biggest ones. And so I just wrote it down and just kind of closed it and just went on my way. Like I never really thought too much about it. And then it came up in discussion with James, who's my partner, and he was like, why are you keeping all that a secret? Like he was like you've written it down. Like why are you scared to tell people that? Like what is it? And I never really thought about it. I think initially sometimes you don't want to share those things out of fear of failure, or if like me, had a habit of like second guessing myself. Maybe that's not something I wanted to share, but I know just sharing that with him and close friends and family around me, it was a game changer, like an absolute game changer, because my network of people truly understood what I wanted to achieve. And then that means they're behind you. I think too often we can be scared of failure, but we're actually taking support away from ourselves by not sharing our aspirations or our goals. And I think being transparent about what I wanted to try and achieve for 2023 just allowed me to relax and enjoy and fully immerse myself in the process of training for an Ironman. And like I couldn't even remember the build up. I remember like it was just so much fun that like it just went so quick. And we had like a really big group of like Cairns mob like doing the Ironman. So we just made it so fun, like group rides, runs, all of that stuff was just really, really enjoyable. And then, yeah, lo and behold, I kind of finished that race ticking those 3 boxes that I wrote down, kind of 6 to 9 months prior. And like that was a bloody game changer for me. What happened in 2023 and getting that slot for Kona and then going on and doing Kona in October, I don't think I've truly kind of taken the time to fully absorb the last 12 to 18 months, because like so much has happened just stemming from like being open about what I wanted to try and achieve. So that's kind of how like 2023 panned out. And then it exploded. Like I think like you would know with Ironman Oceania and then doing the Kona documentary and, having an opportunity to just share a little bit about me, where I'm from, about, you know, Tri Mob and how I got into the sport and what I want to do in this sport, just opened up a huge door of opportunities. And like, I'm so grateful. Like, that doco has just been able to, like, not just opportunities, but it's connected me with like so many women and so many mums. Like you said, you don't know sometimes who you're impacting by what you're doing or what you're saying or anything like that. And so to know that a lot of women out there can kind of take inspiration from that, because like I'm no professional athlete. I'm no, you know, like I was good at sport when I was a kid and stuff like that, but like I just make shit work. And I think at the end of the day, if you really want something, like you'll just make it work, and you will keep the people you need around you to help make it work. And then, you know, like I said before, when one wins, we all win as a collective. And I think that's a huge part of my success is the people behind me. Like there's no way in hell I'd be able to do any of this by myself, like at all.
Yeah, you've covered quite a lot just in that little short period, and I just so people, I think most people are aware, but just to give clarity, so Nadine obviously qualified. I think, did you come fourth or fifth in that fifth in your age group in 2023, which then qualified Nadine to do the Ironman World Championships. Nads was the second ever First Nations woman from Australia to qualify, but the first ever to do it. So that was like a huge thing to be, the first ever Torres Strait Islander person that we're aware of, but to be the first Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman to compete at an Ironman World Championships is huge. And like the one thing that I think Trimob's been super fortunate is the amount of support that it's got from the tri community. And obviously you then had the opportunity to be a featured athlete as a part of the Ironman World Championship Series, which you mentioned. And that's like such a huge thing to have. I think you kind of talked about like how amazing that was, and you're still grappling with, the impact of that. But you did start to mention like particularly a lot of females have reached out to you and a lot of mothers. And like how have you managed the balancing act of being a mother and the importance of representation as a mother in the sport? Like, because it has been a sport male dominated, and to have females who postpartum, is that how you say it? Having a baby, like you were again like a bit of a groundbreaker in that space. So yeah, like talk us at how important like your son is in your life, but also the impact that you're able to have as a mother to other mothers.
Alexander, he's a very special little boy, and it took a long time to create him and bring him into this world. I think even getting into triathlon, I think the initial days of being like a new mum, there used to always be a lot of guilt, like for years, like the first few years, and you kind of don't do things properly. But I'm kind of like, when you see the difference it makes in your children's lives, like my son is so confident, like he's so honest, like there's such a strong trust there that I go like, well, can't be doing too bad then. Like he's just an amazing young boy that I know will go on and do great things, whatever he wants to do, because every single day I'm able to like role model for him that like, this is what mama's passionate about. This is what mama wants to achieve, and this is how she's going to do it. And he's there every step of the way, seeing it all. He's normal. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like everything that happens in our house, whether it's training or recovery or going out and being out around our friends and stuff, that environment and that upbringing is so normal for him. And I think that's what really excites me for his future. Because like you said, triathlon and all these amazing people in the endurance sport are genuinely fantastic, amazing people. And they're the people he gets to grow up around. And yeah, like he's starting to better understand kind of what I did. I think when that documentary came out, he was just like, "Oh, my mum's on YouTube. Like YouTube's cool." But like even with Cairns last year, like him being at the finish line and like he before every single race, he'd be like, like, are you gonna win, mum? Or after races, did you win, mum? Like this and that. Like I always kind of giggle about Cairns last year because like the first time I'd gone on an Ironman podium, let alone win an age group, like I remember finishing and the first thing he said to me was like, "Did you win, mom?" And I'm like, yes. Like being able to honestly say yes to him and not fluff around and be like,
I got a medal.
great. But I think that was like really, really exciting. And obviously with Kona this year and, you know, making sure that he's there for it. Cause like depending on how things go, like this I think might be probably the last time I go and do Kona. So being able to show him exactly what I'm doing so that you know that's something that's a really strong memory down the track for him to fully understand when life gets hard or when things are challenging or just to be able to see his mum do something hard I think is just there's so much magic in that being able to triumph and push through challenges and show your strength to your children whilst doing something you really love is really special and I think that's why I keep going back for more. It's just like you know I love it. The last 12 months have been amazing, like kind of transitioned and started with a new coach, so I've been with Clayton for 12 months now and I think having a new coach and just a different type of relationship and coaching has really allowed me to truly be the athlete that I want to be. And something that's always stuck with me with Clayton's coaching is like your consistency is unique to you as Nadine, as a mum, as a master's student, as a partner. Like, so there's no comparison. Like, when things shit hits the fan or things don't go to plan, it doesn't matter because what I know what works for me is unique to me. And I think there's so much power in knowing that like you shape the way you want to train, the way you want to succeed, the way you want to race. And that's always brought a lot of calmness into races, like even with Kona and there was a lot of pressure and there was all like the filming and all of that hype and you know for the first time I never thought about like what if I didn't finish like they've hyped all this doco up as like the first First Nations like woman to do Kona from Australia like what if I don't finish but it's funny like that never crossed my mind someone 10 years ago me 10 years ago would have been like that would have been the first thing in my head but you know there's just so much calmness and knowing that like you can control the controllables but at the end of the day like there's no reason to let pressure crack you. You know, I think if you feel pressure, you're privileged. You get to enjoy all the hard work that you put in. Yeah, I love being a triathlon mum. I love being an Iron mum. The juggle's not as hard as it used to be because he's older and I co-parent, so it's week on, week off. So I would probably have a more glamorous parenting role because it's full on for every second week. So I know that that's a bit of a luxury as well. But yeah, I think hopefully, you know, women and particularly mums can know that, like I said before, like working with what you have, working with your strengths, working with your support systems, and understanding that because you're a mom and because you have children, that you know you don't let that stop you from achieving the things you want to do. You just got to navigate things differently and work with what you have. But we all deserve to be successful. We all deserve you know, to have dreams, goals, and aspirations. And if I can just be one of the millions of women doing it and be able to share that, again, that's my responsibility to be able to do that.
It's pretty cool too. You talked about right at the beginning, you used the word like power, I think, with your grandfather. And
Yeah.
he gave you power, like he was a powerful, strong person and instilled that confidence is not the right word, but strength in being who you are as an Indigenous woman. But then you use the word power again in that with what you're doing is giving power to Alex, which I think is like a nice sort of thing. Like it's different, but like the same strength, which probably at the core of it comes back to who you are and your identity and your culture. But it's you're passing down also like as a mother, as a parent, as a woman, like this is what I need for me, and this gives me strength, and you're passing that down to Alex, and it's a good way of like kind of reframing, as you said, moving away from feeling guilty, but this is actually powering him. It's not taking away from him. Just to finally wrap up, we'll no doubt talk a lot more, and we'll particularly, I'd love to get you back on before Kona, just to even talk about like more of a prep style thing, just so people get to know like the work that goes in. But you have been really fortunate in sort of, I guess, recent times to have some support from some really good companies.
Yeah.
Did you want to just like mention like some of the support that you received or like sponsorship?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly Koo Cycle. So John from Koo, again, that for linking us up. But like, John and I spoke even before Kona. Like I wasn't even riding that bike for Kona, but it was kind of like the first brand that wanted to sponsor me for who I was, not for what I was doing. And like that, I just absolutely love that. Like the results after have been fortunate and is
Well,
kind
maybe
of
it's because partly the sponsorship they put you on the fast bike.
absolutely, and definitely, Tyler and the gang at Training House, like, oh my God, we all know how expensive nutrition and things like that can be. Yeah, obviously all the tri-mod partners as well, AG1, Win, like it very much a collective. And, sometimes it might not be sponsorship, but it's still just getting around that community and that exposure. And, that's where those conversations and opportunities, certainly come from. But, yeah, no, I've been absolutely blessed. Like I said, the last 12 months, kind of on paper, it looks great. And, I had to make a lot of sacrifices to race a lot last year to keep that momentum. But, getting the result that I needed in Bustleton to kind of set this year up to take the foot off a little bit, to focus on my masters has been an absolute game changer. And yeah, then we get to work again come June, leading into Kona, which is super exciting.
Yeah. And for those that are listening, you can, if you're not already, follow you on social media. What's your platform? Is it just Nadine Hunt?
I think so. Yeah, I should know that.
Good tag, yeah. You've probably got more followers than we do. Um, but also, just so people aware, Nadine's going back to the Ironman World Championship in October. And in between that, I believe still doing London Marathon.
Yeah, I got a marathon. Yeah, London Marathon in what, 5 weeks. I've got a local 30K race here. The was it Cairns 50 with Smurf. And then doing the bike leg for relay in Cairns, and then I'll be on the sidelines with my supporter hat on, which is super exciting. But maybe a 70.3 back end of the year. We'll see how things go.
Lovely. Well, Nadine, Nad's been great to get you on the potty.
Excellent.
And yeah, love all the work that you do and the inspiration that you are to both our women and men within our community. So I look forward to following the journey and supporting you along the way.
Um,
Up the mob. Let's press stop.